What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on what really moved it, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure you hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So SoFi went up 6.44%. So pretty epic day. 1436 the low, 1542 the high, and you did see a lot of good volume. So 84.1 million shares being traded, 62.4 is the average. So today we did have some data. So permits and starts both came in a little bit lower than the forecast. Initial jobless claims came in lower than the forecast, so somewhat mixed as far as that. And then you did have Powell. As anticipated, there wasn't any cuts, and for those of you that kind of tune into my pre-market video, I mentioned some key things that Powell was really going to say, and they came to fruition. So ultimately, the big crux to Powell is the labor data. If we were to have had better labor data, we would have had earlier cuts. Ultimately, that's kind of the moral of the story. So there is still a likelihood of now a earlier cut to maybe July if things do change, again, labor related. But as far as right now, the market is pricing in a September 17th rate cut. So you do have now a 61.7% likelihood of that occurring. And then you did have Trump prior to Powell kind of just saying, hey, he's not going to cut any rates, he's dumb and blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of comical, but I think that was as anticipated. So this should be a pretty good catalyst for the broader market. And again, that is even more important on a lot of labor data going forward. So if you see it starting to improve, you might see the market starting to price in possibly a earlier cut to maybe July. So let me know your viewpoint on that in the comments below. Today, there wasn't any news, no SEC filings associated to SoFi. Rather, this did come out. So ultimately, the feds are considering easing leverage requirements. So there's going to be a board meeting on June the 25th. And so this board meeting, they're going to be looking at revising the supplementary leverage ratio, which is a rule that forces banks to hold capital against all assets. So this is huge. Of course, a lot of deregulation does have a certain level of risk. So there could be abuse coming from a lot of the brick and mortar banks, as what typically has happened in the past. But essentially, this is very, very good for SoFi. So if you have this, and let's say SoFi decides to put out some crypto news, that could be the two catalysts that SoFi needs to get above that $17 range. Because SoFi, for the most part, as I've explained, likes to trade between their happy prices between 13 and 17, really gaining some good momentum. So here on forward, if SoFi does put out a crypto update on some timelines or something along those kind of that regard, then you'll see really SoFi move up like crazy, FOMO 2.0, and then you might even see a squeeze occur. And so today I did anticipate shorts to be relatively active. Today turns out they were relatively tame. They did increase 25,000 shares. 12.94% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 140.48 million shares overall are being shorted. So when it comes down to, let's say, these two catalysts that could essentially prompt a squeeze. I know a lot of people are really wanting SoFi to squeeze to that $20 range or whatever else. So who knows? Fingers crossed for that. But the market is closed tomorrow, so that could be as well one attributing factor why shorts didn't really do all that much, because shorts typically over long weekends or just days off, they don't like to really increase. It just is unnecessary costs that they have to bear. But aside from that, looking at the options, you did have a lot of money getting into SoFi, 28 million in calls, 11 million in puts, 46% of all the options being done were bullish in nature. And you can kind of see that it's $16. That seems to be the consensus, what is anticipated going into next week. And honestly, I tend to agree with that. So I'll go over the technicals and stuff like that in a second. But today you did have 38 million in premiums, 17 yesterday, 20 the day before. So a lot of big money was getting into SoFi today. From the bulls, you see a consensus for it to be above that $15.50 to $16 range, which is matching with those options. And then the bears are anticipating for it to be sub roughly $14.50. So maybe some kind of Middle East conflict for that to kind of escalate. And I think at the end of the day, the market was really watching what the States was going to do, whether they were going to commit and help Israel or not. But they kind of stayed clear. They stayed relatively neutral. So I think the market is relatively optimistic about that. So the next trading day is going to be on Friday. So just take note of this. So you have 59,000 at that $15 strike price, 18,000 at 14.50, 20,000 at that 14, and then 28,000 above 15.50. So this essentially, if SoFi is able to hold anywhere remotely what it had for gains today, then you will see easily a nice gamma squeeze, because just at that $15 strike price alone, that works out to be 5.9 million shares. Encumbering the rest of them, given where SoFi is at, that is a solid close to roughly 9 million shares that market makers will have to cover. So things could get very real very fast. These are all the transactions that did occur on the secondary market above $100,000. So a hell of a lot of big transactions, a lot of big strings of buying. So big money definitely was liking that update. And honestly, I don't blame them. Pretty good stuff for that. When it comes to this, so with it closing at 15.36, it is now trading between this R3 and this R2. So in comparison to a lot of other growth stocks, SoFi is doing very well, and it just went up like crazy today. So good stuff to see for that. In the next day, so Friday, just watch for 15.19 to be the next strong support, followed by 14.89, then 15.66 to be the next strong target / resistance. Aside from that, no real articles coming out for SoFi, no new analyst ratings. So it's just, again, piggybacking off of the news and generally optimistic market. On the actual chart itself, so this is where you see a little bit more of a clear defined golden cross. I know I mentioned a couple of videos ago that it wasn't like definitive and it wasn't clear, but as of today, you clearly see a nice division going on right here. So yeah, things are looking pretty a-okay above the ALMA, and even looking at stochastic RSI, because of a lot of the volatility over the last couple of days, you have it somewhat neutral. So it's not oversold, nor is it overbought, but still that's going to really benefit SoFi in the next couple of trading days. So as I've mentioned in the past, it was going to come down to a pinch. We were either going to really move significantly higher or really break down. But I think all in all, SoFi is ready to move back to that $17 to $18 range, at least in the short term. Let me know if you agree with that, or potentially, like I mentioned, if they were to put out a substantial catalyst, then you might even see it go further than that by shorts returning. So yeah, things could get very real even this week with the gamma squeeze and whatever else. So yeah, it's an interesting time. SoFi is very hard to catch the bottom, it's very hard to predict, but in reality, dollar cost averaging is the way to go. So let me know your viewpoint. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And then one final thing, pop over to my Patreon. I give buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.